Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. And if you guys, that's not, okay. If you guys want to unmute yourself so you can talk, please feel free to do so. It's a pretty small group. I think there's only about 20 people right now. We've already done one presentation on Monday for the Fort Bend convening event. We had about 50 people on the call. Because we had so much going on this week, I kind of want this to be a shorter call. So I think we're going to skip on the current event and just go over the material that we were going to talk about, Representable, and how you start identifying your community of interest. Okay. I'm going to share my screen. Some of this is going to be a repeat, but I want to go over it once again so everyone kind of has a understanding of a community of interest, basically. So we're doing this, of course, because the Texas legislature is holding their public input hearings for the next round of redistricting. At these public input hearings, we're supposed to be telling them about our communities of interest. Joaquin Gonzalez joined us last time, and he talked also about our Fair and Open campaign, because not only do we want them to listen to us about our communities of interest, but we also want a fair and open process when they do so. So he gave you some advocacy points to include in your testimony. I walked through what nonpartisan criteria look like, what they are here and across the nation, basically. But importantly, what the League is a very big supporter of is something called a community of interest. And so we would like to see district maps based on this data. So I'm going to kind of walk you through that once again. So a community of interest is a contiguous population which shares common social and economic interests that should be included within a single district for purposes of its fair and effective representation. So the example that I give at most of my talks that I give is imagine like you're going out to West Texas to set up a town, and it's like the 1800s. So what are some of the first things you're going to need to find when you get out there? You're going to need to find a water supply, a way to grow food, a way to build your house. Soon enough, you're going to have maybe a small collection of houses, a small neighborhood. Then after that, you'll have a grocery store and other stores popping up, a hospital, a school, maybe even a line of transportation will go by, maybe the railroad. And then soon enough, that small town will have a shared culture and a shared history. So we refer to this community as a community of interest. They share common resources and they share common experiences on which they need to advocate with a cohesive voice at the legislature, basically. So I want to go over some communities of interest. Oops, too far. There we go. So these are the standard ones that I usually share. So you have a shared culture, history, a line of transportation, common weather. So, the Gulf Coast area, they experience more hurricanes. In Central Texas, we're more concerned about droughts and fires. And then out in West Texas, I'm sure they're more concerned about droughts as well. Common watershed areas. As I was waiting to get on this call, another great example of the community of interest is right now in Hays County. They are drilling a pipeline through, or they were about to drill the pipeline through, I should say. And that's been prevented by Hays County now because that pipeline, they actually contaminated the watershed in the neighboring county, Blanco County. So that's an example of a community of interest that would definitely want to have a cohesive voice of representation. Yeah, advocating against the pipeline, I guess, out there. Other economical regions are also considered to be communities of interest, and this is one that the business community could rally around. This would be common industrial areas, common agricultural areas, tech, Army, trying to think of some other ones. Yeah, I'm not good at that. But yeah, at any rate, economical regions are another one. Recreational areas. So this would be stuff like not only your parks and like small parks and state parks and stuff like that, but also think stadiums and other large entertainment areas that people will congregate at. Income status across counties is another one, even closer down to the local level. And we'll be talking more about that. Joaquin Gonzalez will hopefully be joining us. Okay, yeah, and I'm going to pass it over to him in a minute. He can show you some of how to look this information up on another piece of software that we'll be demonstrating in a second. Common housing, languages spoken, that's going to be a very important one here in Texas. School areas, healthcare areas and hospital districts, and then common goals. Maybe your area is trying to reduce crime, or maybe your goal is to increase jobs and better the economy in your area. So as I was thinking about what to talk about tonight, I thought of some other ones. And so before the coronavirus kind of came in and shut down the whole country, I was working on the east side of Houston. So I grew up on the east side of Houston, north of the Strip Channel, but I actually went to school in a red line community, and it was a historical Black community called Pleasantville. And so not far from Pleasantville, recently up in the 5th Ward, there was a large creosote contamination, which caused a cancer cluster. So this is another really good example of a community of interest. And I'll show you what this looks like on a map in just a second. So here are some other examples from the example that I just gave you. Redlining, old redlining maps can be used and drawn upon, because when you look at this, the history around redlining, these neighborhoods are still experiencing a lot of problems and a lot of inequalities. So areas that have been redlined are something else to consider. And all of these neighborhoods, not all of them, but a good majority of these neighborhoods are also experiencing gentrification. Environmental disasters, like I just mentioned, especially on the east side of Houston, because we were so close to the Ship Channel. Another one to think about is voter access problems. If you had to stand in a long line recently in the last election, or if you had a polling location that closed down recently. Median household incomes, I think I've mentioned a few of these already in the previous slide. Access to healthcare is going to be another big one. High school and college graduation rates, prison population. So if you have a prison in your county, that's one thing to keep in mind, because that's going to influence the number of people that are going to be counted in your district, because prisoners will be counted in your district. Or if you have a large percentage of your population that is sent to prison. So up on the south side of Dallas, there is one census tract that contributes to a huge majority of our prison population here in Texas. So that would be another example of a community of interest to talk about. And a lot of these areas that have been impacted by redlining also are going to have problems. They're going to have problems accessing resources. So it's difficult for them to pay bills, keep up with rent. A lot of times the water districts and the water boards will not have diverse members on them. So that's other stuff to keep in mind as well. Trash pickup, I saw Judy Ackerman on the phone. Judy's out from El Paso. I know on the west side of El Paso, kind of as you get out more into El Paso County, away from El Paso, they have a problem with trash pickup. So that's another one to keep in mind as well. I know that's also a problem in San Antonio. Access to clean water would be another one to consider. And I want to really quickly show you the map that I drew of the 5th Ward and show you how it lines up with the redlining map, the old redlining map. Can you guys still see my screen okay? Okay, so this is one that I threw up. This is the tool that we're going to be using in just a little bit and playing around with, and hopefully you guys can start drawing your community of interest. So I want to show you first. So here's Houston. Here's the 290 loop. Here is the I-10 loop closer in, right here in the center. Sorry, this one right here that I just said was 290. That's actually 610. I'm sorry, 290 goes out this way. Okay, so here's the old redlining map from the 1930s. Don't know if you guys are familiar with the idea behind redlining, but it was basically a way to keep America segregated a bit more. And so the real estate market would deny loans to Black communities. And so anywhere you see red was basically a Black community, and they would rank people based on their reliability or what they thought would be a reliable customer to repay the loan. So these red areas oftentimes would not, if they did receive a loan, it would be at like an exorbitant rate. At any rate, I wanted to show you, this is Houston. This is downtown Houston over here. This area right here is the 5th Ward.
Can you increase the size of your screen share to make the map a little bit more visible?
How big does it look on your screen right now?
It's a little small.
I'm not sure if I can. Let me stop sharing the screen and then share it again and see if that fixes the problem. Let me see what happens if I just share the, is that any bigger? No.
Yeah, a little bit. It's much better, yeah.
Wendy, you're shaking your head. No, it's not any bigger.
Well, we're not going to be able to see the street details, but we can see the color details a lot better.
Okay, so when I send out the follow-up email, I'll provide the links to all of this, don't worry. So you guys can go around and play around with it. So there's one for most of the major cities. There's actually quite a few from Texas, which I was pretty surprised about all the way back in the 1930s. You think it would be just the Metroplex areas, but it was all around the state. So this area in the center that I'm kind of pointing at, hopefully you guys can see it. This is a 5th Ward area right here. And then all the way over here, this is a community that I went to elementary school in. This is called Pleasantville. And so when they drew this house district, it lines up pretty astoundingly well, quite shockingly. So in between here, at least when I went to school, this was Hispanic and Latino community. Some of my friends lived over here. I used to go spend the night at their house. But the district map comes right over here by Pleasantville, where I went to school, cuts out this Hispanic and Latino area, that yellow area in the middle, and then comes back over and picks up the 5th Ward. And I believe that's Representative Dalton's district today. So I was pretty surprised actually to see the amount of overlap between this redlined communities and this House district today. So the 5th Ward is the area that I mentioned where the creosote contamination was. There's a huge cancer cluster there. The cancer rate in the community currently is sitting at 50%. Maybe it's a little less than 50%. Let me not exaggerate. I think it's like 47% or something like that. So I was, before the coronavirus, working with people here in the community, trying to convince them to come out actually to the Fort Bend hearing to present testimony. So hopefully if we pick back up on the hearings, which we're trying to convince the House and Senate committees to do, we can find some people out from this community to come out and present testimony on their community of interests. But coming back to Representable really quick, can you guys see Representable? Or is it still the red line map now? No, still the red line map. Okay, so I've tried to map out this region on the east side of town. And so here, let me zoom in. Over here is the 5th Ward area. And then over here was Pleasantville. And then I've expanded it. And so really who should be drawing this community of interest is someone from that community. It should not be me, but I wanted to give you an example of what that would look like. I I think next, I wanted to quickly walk through some examples of Fort Bend County that I had pulled, because I know there might be some people from Fort Bend County because of Monday's call. And so I just did some quick searches on Wikipedia to, let me push play, that would be helpful. Find out some facts about Fort Bend County that you guys might want to consider when you draw your community of interest on a map. So first of all, I did not know this, but Fort Bend County is the wealthiest county in Texas. You guys have the highest income in all of the state, average house income, basically. So in contrast to Greater Houston, Fort Bend County's economy is more diverse. So you have more service sector jobs in healthcare, energy, education, hospitality, and other areas. Major companies for the presence include Schlumberger, Minute Maid, Fluor, Sunoco. And then you also have a lot of hospitals down there, which I was quite surprised about, which is a really good sign. You have Memorial Hermann, St. Luke's, Houston Methodist. So that might be something you guys want to talk about. Then you also have, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It looks like 6 school districts included in your county. That's something to also consider, although just keep in mind that the chairman of the House Committee will push back on you if you say, I would like my community of interest to, to match the school district. He'll go into a long talk about the Voting Rights Act, and sometimes they have to draw districts that look funny for a reason. And it turns into a big, it's not a big mess, but he'll sometimes call people out on it. I live in Austin, and to be honest with you, my community of interest actually reflects pretty well my school district. So when I give testimony on my community of interest, it will probably be something that looks like the school district. But also keep in mind that some of these school districts have been racially gerrymandered, historically racially gerrymandered over the years. So just keep that in mind as well. Another thing to consider is your media outlets. Right now you get most of your media coverage, and this is just an example, by the way, because I know, like I said, there's gonna be a lot of people on Fort Bend, so this is just an example. So for Fort Bend, consider that you're getting most of your media coverage from the Houston area, so it's gonna be important for you guys to advocate that you have an overlapping media outlet with the Houston area. You wanna be getting your news from a district that's going to be in the Houston area, right? It's difficult right now for congressional districts, especially, for example, Congressional District 10. Congressional District 10 spans all the way across the eastern part of Texas. It goes from the west side of Houston and Katy all the way over to actually the west side of Austin. So you have multiple media markets in there. You would have the Houston media market. You probably have a little bit of Bryan College Station. And then you would also have the Austin media market. And so for people in that congressional district, you probably don't get the same message or the same type of news on your local news area about what's going on in Congress, so on and so forth. Transportation is another one to keep in mind. You might want to include that in your community of interest. And I want to point out that major highways are probably not the best border for some of these districts, especially for communities of interest. So I want you to think of major highways and main roads as more of a corridor for people in the surrounding areas to get to like a common destination. So grocery stores, shopping areas. So it's probably not a good idea to make it the boundary, but consider it, like I said, more of a shared access point / corridor. Airlines, airports would be another one to consider. Modes of public transportation. Again, in El Paso, I know the bus line was very important to Judy when she put her testimony together back in January. And then it's also probably a good idea if you're on the border, like, so you have Houston, and then on the southwest side is Fort Bend County. So you wanna consider who you're more alike to. And this goes for counties, cities, and neighborhoods. You can include in your testimony, my community of interest is more similar to the Houston area rather than to this more rural area down south in Brazoria or wherever that might be. Really quickly, I want to show you the nonpartisan testimony guide, and then I'm going to let Joaquin jump on. So this nonpartisan testimony guide is available on the Fair Maps website. It's also up on the League's website. So if you go to fairmapstexas.org and click on Public Input Hearings up at the top, it'll take you to this page that I'm on. And then you can scroll down to Testimony Guides right here and click on Guide to Communities of Interest. So it kind of walks you through some of the stuff that I was just talking about. I actually pulled a bunch of this from the materials that were passed out in California when they implemented their independent redistricting commission. But I did want to show you the example testimony in case you guys were wondering what that should look like, because it's in California, they heavily promoted the idea of communities of interest. And so that's the type of data that the commission collected. And so they've given you a really great example here, and I'll just read through it quickly. I live in a unique area, Farmers Branch, called Oakno Valley. It is a certified neighborhood council. The neighborhood is bounded between Highway 9 on the west and Sunnyside River on the east. There are approximately 8,000 residents. And it's primarily a residential area with some areas zoned for commercial and mixed use. That might be a little too detailed. I don't expect you guys to walk in with testimony like that, but that's a good start. And so then they talk about the languages spoken in Oak Knoll. They say that most residents go outside for shopping and employment. They tend to stay here for socializing and religious activities. Across the river from Oak Knoll is the community of River Glen, which is similar to our community. So here they've done that comparison of which community is more similar to theirs, so they can be grouped together with them. And then they've given at the bottom an example of an industrial and commercial area. So this is a fairly decent example of communities of interest. And I just wanted to say that communities of interest is not like it's not a perfect way of drawing districts. So one of the fears that we have is that once we present the legislator with this information, that they will actually turn around and use it to our disadvantage, and they will actually start packing people in. And when they pack people in, they basically diminish their voice of representation statewide or in that region. So instead of having 50% split like-minded groups, it would be more like this one is 75% and then the neighboring county would have 25%, to give you an example, if that makes sense. So it's not always a 100% good fit. It does tend to be, and this is the idea of why we've created districts to begin with. And so it is a concept that the courts have recognized as a decent method of drawing district maps. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Joaquin really quick. Are you there?
Hey.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. Did you log on with your computer by any chance?
Yep.
Oh, there you go. I had to stop sharing my screen. I knew that.
Yeah. So I was just going to show y'all a couple of tools that y'all can use to look at current demographic data and also current maps. Let me share my screen. So this is justicemap.org. I think I can also, I'll paste them in the chat box when we're done here. This is 2010 census data, and you can zoom in. They have it, I guess the default setting is it looks at the racial demographics, and here's sort of a legend in the corner. You can see the different shadings, and it shows you the plurality racial demographic in a different region. And I think if you go to this advanced mode up here, you can select what level you're looking at it at. So you can look at the whole county, and if you click on the county, it will give you the, it'll give you the statistics for that county over here. You can look at census tracts and go down to further level. It'll give you the census tract information, and you can go all the way down to census blocks, which are the smallest geography that they have the data at. And so this is like the east side of San Antonio here. So that's one tool you can use. And then you can also look at income and population density, also with the different tract or county levels. And then these are just two maps that I made that you can access. I'll paste the URLs in the chat box. This is similar. It's just, I had overlaid the, and I'll do the same for the Texas congressional and state house districts, but it's a demographic map again with the districts laid over them, and you can turn off the different ethnic and racial groups and see the, shading will tell you what sort of the predominant group in an area is. Let's see, the Hispanic. So it's another tool, and you can, if you want to like type in your address or something, you can type in your address and see your own area. And these are actually based on the precinct level data, the demographic data is. And then over here, it's just, this is all the current districts. So and you can toggle them on and off, so you can just view one layer. So these are like the congressional districts. And again, you can type in a location here and see the different district lines. So if you want to go into your neighborhood and see which districts it's in, you can do that, and you can turn on the different state house and state senate districts and see how different neighborhoods might be. Like this one is, in this congressional district, but in this state house district. And you can click on them and see which district numbers they are. That was it, really. Just wanted to share those with y'all in case they're useful as you're looking at your own communities. And I'll paste those right now in the chat box. That was all I had, though.
Okay, I'm gonna jump back over to Representable now, and hopefully this works. Hopefully.
I have a question of Joaquin. That last series of maps that you were showing, are those all of them ones that you drew, or are they partially some that you drew and some that exist?
So the districts are all the current districts that I just took the shape files from the Texas legislature and downloaded them. And then the census demographic files are just what the Census Bureau puts out. So none of it was districts that I drew or anything. It was all the current districts and current data.
You just transferred it to a different system other than the district viewer, is what you did.
Yeah, because district viewer, you can't look at demographic data on the map, and you also can't look at the different districts at the same time. You can only look at like the congressional district or the state house district. So you can't like overlay them. And you can't see like demographic shading either.
Okay. And you're going to put the URL for that set of maps in the chat?
Yeah, I just typed them in the chat box, and maybe Stephanie can send them around too afterwards or something, but they should be in there now.
Yeah, I can put it in the email, no problem. So I wanted to point out that all of this, the reason that everything's kind of so scattered right now is because there are a lot of data sources that we're trying to optimize. So like Joaquin just pointed out, District Viewer, the mapping tool that the Texas legislator provides to citizens of the state won't overlap districts. So you can't overlap your congressional district with your state legislative district. And it doesn't show you demographics as well. So it's hard to find this data presented in a useful form. I think the closest we're going to get to it next week, we'll be showing you District R, which is a free software from the from Tufts University, a group over there called the Metric Geometry and Gerrymandering Group. They've managed to put one of these redistricting software tools together, and it's available free online. And so next week, or actually probably maybe even the week after that, we'll go through that. Okay, so let me share my screen. I'm going to walk you through Representable really quick. So this is a tool from the Princeton Gerrymandering Project. We were collaborating with them, and then the coronavirus struck and they had to cancel some of the presentations they were flying down here to do. So yeah, we're doing our own little talk tonight instead. It's a great tool, and to be honest with you, Joaquin had actually developed a very similar tool. Hey Joaquin, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Is yours pretty comparable to the Princeton Group's tool, and is it available on your website?
I mean, it did function the same, except for it didn't store it. It was just for like printing it off if you wanted to attach it to testimony. But there wasn't a way you could like save the map, and it's also not up on the website. It was just like a test thing I had made. We never actually like took it live or anything.
Okay. So Representable is kind of like the same idea, where it allows you to draw a community of interest on a map by drawing a polygon. It sounds like Representable is a little different in that it will, it gives you the ability to layer maps. So you can take maybe like a small group of people, 10 people, pull up their map from your community and overlay it, and that will kind of help you identify your community of interest on the overlapping regions, basically. So I wanted to walk you through it really quick. It's a pretty simple tool to use. So after you have created your login, hopefully everyone has done that by now. Let me make sure has everyone done that? Yes, hopefully. I'm gonna give you 30 seconds really quick. I'll give 30 seconds, a 30 seconds pause so people can create a username and login really quick.
So you want to log in to Representable?
I am logged in and I already have my login and password.
So what are you asking us to do, Stephanie? Log in to our own?
Either log into your account or create a username and password.
Okay. And how is that going to work with your screen share and our leaving that?
You should be able to have two windows open on your computer, hopefully. One with the Zoom chat, so you can still see what's going on in Zoom, and then you can also hopefully have your internet window, a separate internet window separately, or your Zoom window.
Okay. Let's see how that works. Anybody else have concerns like I do? Or does everybody know how to do this already? Here we go.
I'm doing it for the first time also, so.
I'm not alone. That is awesome.
No, you're not.
I'm doing it first time as well.
Hey.
What do we need to do?
Is that Pat? Is that Pat White?
Yes,
Hey, did you ever make a user an account on Representable?
no,
Can you do that right now? Can you create a username and password for Representable? And I was giving everyone a little bit of time to do that, and in a minute we can go on to actually using the tool.
I'm not sure what to do. Don't know what to do that.
Did you go to representable.org?
Okay, I think I can help with that, maybe. If you go ahead and try to get back to your web screen, that will help. Your Zoom will disappear, but have no fear, you can get back on it once you get to the internet. So you need to get to the internet and open up a tab and put in representable.org.
Okay, I need to get back to that.
Okay, so once you get to representable.org, up here on the right-hand side, there's a place where you can sign up or log in. So I'm gonna hit log in because I already have an account. If you don't have an account, you can hit sign up. Okay, so I'm logged in now. The tool is not perfect yet. They're still trying to get parts of it more functional and more user-friendly, so please keep that in mind. If you do have any feedback, though, please feel free to either send it to me or to them. I've given them a little bit of feedback, and some of the feedback I've given them are still current problems, so I think they might just be behind because of the coronavirus and other stuff like that, so also keep that in mind. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started. So the first thing you wanna do is either hit contribute on the middle of the screen. Do you see it over here on the left or up on the top right in the menu bar at the top? You can hit new entry. Okay, and it's gonna start by asking you for a zip code. I can never remember the zip code on the east side of Houston, so I'm going to just, this is the northeast side of Houston, where my parents are. Going to zoom in. So this is the Houston area again. This is the example that I was walking you through earlier. And so I know this is a lot to ask of everyone, but all of the data that we presented to you and all of these different places, that's stuff that you want to consider. And I know you can't visualize it on this map, and so it might be useful to find where the roads are that are going to, be the edge of your community of interest, so you can draw it on this map over here. Okay, so some things to look at right now. Up here on the left-hand side of the map, it says toggle census blocks. So you can click that on and you can get the census blocks. This is very busy for me, so I prefer not to use them. But if you are interested, you can draw your community of interest based on census blocks. Okay, I'm going to zoom in a little more. And so here's that east side of Houston that I was showing you earlier. So what you're going to want to do is over on the right-hand side of the map, you see an option to a button, I guess. It says draw polygon.
Stephanie, you're not sharing your screen anymore, so we can't see what you're seeing.
Oh, no, I can see it.
I think Zoom has a lot of problems right now. Let me try sharing just the web browser. Lydia, does that help you?
No.
No.
The only way I can see it is if I go out of the minimal view of Zoom and get back to the full view, and then I can't see my map either. So it's
Okay. I'm going to walk you through this then. It should be recording this, and so you can go back and look later after, because it's only going to take literally like probably a minute to show you how to use it. Okay, so I'm zoomed into Houston right now. Up here on the right-hand side, there's a button that says Draw Polygon. So I'm going to click on that Draw Polygon button. And as you can click on the map on the area that you're interested in, and you can start drawing a polygon. So every time I click on the map, it adds a new vertice to that polygon. So that's probably too big, but you kind of get the idea. So I'm going to double click that to finish drawing the polygon, and it's going to pull up all of the census blocks that are located in that polygon area. It used to report statistics at the bottom, so that must be a change that they recently made. Usually it would report back to you the population that you've captured, what size it looks like, and it would have given you a comparison to a current legislative district, but that doesn't do that anymore. Importantly though, what's unique about this tool is that you can list things that is unique to this community of interest. So you can name your community, and then you can list the what am I trying to say, the areas of interest or the advocacy points that your community of interest might come together to advocate about. So for example, I gave you that in Hayes County, they just denied a permit to the pipeline drilling through Hayes County. So you could list something like that. On the east side of Houston, which is the example that I should have given you, it's the creosote contamination, it's redlining, it's all of these other factors that I had outlined earlier in the talk. And so you can list it out right here, or you can come down, and they've tried to give you examples of what your community might come together to advocate for or against. And then you have the option of including a short description. You can include a community tag. So for the Houston community tag, that community of interest that I just drew, I would include the 5th word, creosote contamination. And I would list redlining and other things like that. And then importantly, you want to list if this is your community or not. So no, I don't live in that community, but it's still important to label it as a community of interest. So basically that's it. So importantly though, at the very bottom, you're going to hit submit entry. And so what's unique about the Princeton Gerrymandering Projects tool is that, like I said, it will keep all of these maps and it will compile them, and you can then layer the maps and find where the overlap is in all of these different communities of interest. So that's it. It's a very simple tool to use. I think it's pretty straightforward to use as well. If you do have any problems using it, feel free to reach out to me, and I can call you up, or I can send you an email and try to walk you through it, no problem. And definitely please provide feedback, and I can send it along to the Princeton group as well. But we're hoping to start getting people in different regions of the state to start working on their own maps, their own district maps. And so this is going to be step 1 for this map making process. Step 2 is going to be trying to figure out more of a community-wide organizational strategy, right? Because we want different groups in the community to partner with. So let's first work on our community of interest, and then next week we can come back and talk about how we can start building larger district maps, who we can start partnering with, who we can start reaching out to get their input on these maps as well, if that makes sense, hopefully. Okay, so that's it. Does anyone have any questions right now?
There are several questions on the chat.
Thank you. Okay, let me scroll up. Brian, was that what in your example, Brian Duncan, what political office was that for? What question was that? Do you remember what part of the talk that was for? Are you still on the call?
You first showed the map, and then when you did it again for drawing the polygon in East Houston.
Oh, so that's,
And I just logged on and I followed what you did just now, but I'm not seeing something where you were saying we're trying to draw a congressional district, we're trying to draw a state senate district, we're trying to draw a state house district.
so I think that's where, that's what the beauty of this tool is. So this is just to identify specifically your community of interest. So it doesn't identify a house district, it does not identify a senate district, it does not identify a congressional district. This identifies just a specific geographic region where you know that this community, the people living in this area, come together, they get together often, they socialize, they have shared needs, and they have a reason to have a cohesive voice of representation at the legislature. And so you can take this map that you produce, your community of interest map, and you can apply it to any district you want. You can apply it to your state house district, you can apply it to your school board district, you can apply it to your water board district. That's usually how powerful it is. So this is a huge, very critical first step in the map making process. Once you have this information available, you then can apply it to all of these different districts. And so the next step is to take your community of interest map and find other people in the community that you want to work with so you can build that map out and draw larger district maps. So next week we'll next week we're going to take a break. I'm tired. The week after that, we'll talk about the mapping process and how we can connect with other groups and other people in the community about combining these maps, combining ideas, finding out where other communities of interest are, where like-minded people are.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, so Jeff Shea, are county lines usually used for district lines? Sometimes they are for our state house districts. Our state constitution dictates that our state house lines, population permitting, follow the county line rule basically. So if you can fit an entire district in a county, you can't cross county line basically. So sometimes they do follow county line, other times they don't. Okay, it seems like US District 22 includes all of Fort Bend County and one section extending east in Brazoria County, and then maybe a bit more in another county. That's probably true. Our congressional maps, they can do whatever they want with, which is why we need to be very vocal about what we want them to look like right now. They can extend, like the example I gave was Congressional District 10. It goes from the west side of Austin all the way to the west side of Houston. So it's a very good example of how badly they can gerrymander because there is no geographical limit that they have to follow. Why are school districts not ideal to reference? So this is a complicated question. So I'm going to do it when I provide my input on communities of interest. But a lot of times the chair of the committee will say, we have to follow the BRA sometimes, and I'm not quite sure if I believe him on that, but then he'll say that there is a reason why our districts look funny or why we have to break precincts or do this or do that. And we can't always follow school district boundaries per se. So that's the point he likes to point out. But by all means, if you want to advocate for your school district boundary as your community of interest, then please do so.
Steph, has anybody expressed an inability to get the hand tool to create the polygon? Because I'm finding, first of all, when I type in my zip code, it puts me in New Jersey instead of Corpus Christi. So then when the search comes up, I put in my zip code again and it will put me on Corpus Christi, but it doesn't allow me to draw a polygon.
No, I haven't heard of that sort of problem. Do you wanna, are you comfortable dropping your email address in the message, in the chat box, and I can contact you offline?
Okay, sure.
I know when I put in my zip code, for some reason they're taking people to zip codes that end in 0, regardless of what you put in. And I said, well, that doesn't make any sense. But staying in New Jersey, that shouldn't happen. That's where they're located. And I'm just wondering what the problem is. Okay, so going back to Brian, you asked a question, am I correct that there will be no change in school district boundaries? Only the school board districts within that district? That's correct. The school district boundaries shouldn't be updated unless they incorporate new regions, which they do at times, because for an example is Fort Bend County, there's like a tremendous population growth there. And so they oftentimes will have to incorporate areas into that school district boundary to accommodate these students. So you'd have to refer back to that school district to find out when the last time the school district boundary was updated, basically. How do the US districts relate to the state districts? Again, they don't. So the US congressional districts are going to be completely separate from the state districts. And it's going to be the Texas legislature that draws our congressional districts as well. Oh, thank you, Virginia, for finding the zip code for the 5th ward. I appreciate that. Okay,
I put in my zip code and I don't get anything.
it doesn't take you to your,
No, I saw that New Jersey one or whatever it was to begin with, and then no. And yes, it wanted to put a 0 on there first. I finally got the 5 in, but there's nothing on the screen. Yeah, or on the block.
I'm going to make a note and I'll email you about it, okay? Because I probably need to find out like what type of internet system you're using and what device you're on and stuff like that.
Okay.
Sorry that it couldn't work.
Thank you.
If anyone else is having problems, please feel free to email me. I'm going to put my email in the chat box.
That happened to me, and I just put in my zip code in the search bar in the right-hand side upper part of the map.
I also tell them about it. Thanks, buddy. There we go. Okay, did anyone else have any questions?
So should we train all of the upcoming candidates for the Texas Ledge in this?
I don't think that would be a good idea.
You think it would frighten them or what?
No, we're trying to keep legislators out of the process of drawing their own maps as much as possible. And so it's kind of like the same ideas, like candidates having an input. So the idea behind it is, maps by the people. I think that's the name of Joaquin's website that he made for the Texas Civil Rights Project. And you really want it to be like a people-powered campaign. And so you want to remove as much legislative influence as possible. If you want to like tell the candidates about this, like, yeah, have at it for sure, no problem. Because the more they know about the system, the better, right?
Right. I'm talking about people that aren't in the ledge yet, that are just running, just for informational purposes.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah. I like the more people that know about this, the better.
But I get the total point that it needs to be people powered. I appreciate that.
Stephanie, you said it's just community of interest that are doable on this map. There's no way to overlay a congressional district. Is existing, for example, District 2?
No, so for this
Okay.
program specifically, it's only for drawing your community of interest. And so this is where it's going to get very complicated and confusing because like I said, we've had all of these different software programs that we have to pull up and have open at the same time because none of them can overlay all of the information that we need into one place. So that's where it's going to get complicated. So Representable so far cannot pull up your congressional district. That is one thing that I've asked them, I think, to do. However, I'm not quite sure if they're going to get around to doing that anytime soon, to be honest with you. So that's why I was saying earlier, it'd be a good idea to, if you can, when you outline your polygon, to kind of find some roads on the perimeter to follow along and to take note of if you want to go back and compare it to your congressional district or your state house district and so on and so forth.
Okay. Yeah, it would make it so much easier just because you could see where they had gerrymandered based on the ethnic tool here, which whoever did this did a great job, where you were clicking over there and they were showing Anglo population, Hispanic population and all. It should be where the gerrymanders, it shows where they reached out and grabbed a voting block. And so it would just make it much easier to look at what they did and be able to pull back on it or whatever. But no criticism. This is an excellent program. These young folks have done a great job.
I think the next step, the next program that we'll demonstrate is District R. And so that one will have some demographic data layered in that you can look at. So if you want to go in and start examining our current district maps, that's very doable right now. And I can include that in the follow-up email as well. District R. So you guys can start playing around with it if you want to. Did anyone else have any questions? No? Okay, well then I'm gonna wrap it up for tonight. We got it in at an hour.
Sorry, yeah, I've been having.
Oh wait, you broke up. We can't hear you. Can you try one more time? Oh, it's still quiet. Can you maybe type it in the text box? The chat box? No. Can you guys still hear me though? Yes, because Jeff just said that your mic doesn't work. Okay. Samita, please feel free to email me or to call me. I can even put my phone number down there if you guys want to reach out to me, and I can answer questions on my phone, no problem. Okay, all right, well, I'm going to end the call then if no one else has any questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thanks.
Thank you.